Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 401. We're doing our week 19 NFL picks against the spread for the 2022 NFL season. That's the first round of the playoffs. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you and how's your final week of the regular season?
I'm doing pretty well. Can't complain about the last week of the regular season. Ended up going 11 and 5 overall. So really solid week. Most of our big picks hit. We went 4-1 in our joint super contest entry. The only loss was the Raiders. I'll let you talk about that a little bit more after this, but I generally thought we were on the right side of pretty much everything. You know, we had a couple losses. Like I ended up on the Bucks because I thought they were going to play their starters longer. That didn't end up happening. I was on the Jets at plus 3.5 in that game, which was the worst beat of my season when that safety rolled out of the end zone in the worst. It was so close to not doing it, and I couldn't even tell live if they had ruled it a safety that I was like, did I win? Did I lose? But I didn't bet heavily on that one. It was like half a unit pick just because that line value looked good to me on Sunday morning. But, other than the few trip ups I had, pretty good week. So I can't complain. Glad to build some momentum going into the playoffs. And, it seems like we have our final week of the season strategy in pretty good shape. So I'll take that going forward. But how are you? How was your last week?
Well, it was that Raider game, as you kind of prompted, was pretty tilting for me because if I would have gotten that one right, I would have been tied for second in the mini contest and the super contest, the final 6 weeks of the season. It would have been, I think, like $12,000 for me, but instead I got zero because the Raiders didn't cover. So that was pretty awful. Other than that, it was a pretty good week. I went 10-6 against the spread, plus 4.6 units. And it would have been plus 11 units had the Broncos covered. They were up 11 with a few minutes left, and then they muffed the punt. And of course, the Chargers get the 2-point conversion with Chase Daniel after they played Justin Herbert and the rest of the starters for like 3 quarters. And Keenan Allen was on the field even after Justin Herbert got pulled. So I have no idea what Brandon Staley was thinking. It's kind of like a Mike McCarthy level type coach. The coaching there, and we didn't have any history on Staley, so we didn't know if he was going to play his starters or not. And apparently, he just doesn't know how to handle the end of the regular season. It really baffles me because we know how precious these bye weeks are. In fact, like when teams have a bye week that's way too early or way too late, they complain about it. And yet these teams are granted a second bye week through just previous results. And they're rewarded for it. And you would think that these coaches would just like take the week off and use it to prepare, for their next opponent. And, if you're the Chargers, you probably know who you're going to play. Like it's one of like 2 teams. So you can use the bye week to prepare and like not worry about this week 18 game, but instead Brandon Staley played everyone. And, Mike Williams got hurt. Not only Williams, Joey Bosa got banged up. He'll probably play this week, but Mike Williams is a huge question mark. So congratulations, Brandon Staley. If I were the Chargers owner, I would have at halftime, I would have gone down to the field and you're out of here. You're fired. That's what I would have done. But I don't get these coaches.
Yeah, I think the one thing with Staley that I kind of understood was coming into the week, they knew that there was a scenario that if Baltimore beat the Bengals, then the Chargers would have to win to get the 5 seed. And frankly, what's an easier matchup against Jacksonville as opposed to if they got the 6 seed playing Cincinnati? So I understand why he would have prepared throughout the week and said, all right, I'm going to play our starters. You guys got to plan on playing, be ready to go in case we need to win this game. But when Baltimore lost, he should have been able to pivot the plan and say, hey, I know you guys have gotten jazzed up for this game. You're going to go out there, play a couple series, and then I'm going to pull you. I don't want to take you out of your rhythm. I know you've worked hard in practice this week, so let's go out there, get some reps, and then we'll get you out of the game. But they played into the 3rd quarter. I think some played into the 4th. It was just we kept saying at Sporting News in our work chat, we're like, all right, is he going to take him out of the game now? How about now? How about now? You've got to get him out of this game. So, I mean, it was one of those just maddening things. Again, it's fine if you're going to play your starters a little bit when you have nothing to play for, just because you prepared them to. But once you get past that point, you're playing through halftime. It's like, what do you have to gain from this? You only have things to lose, especially for an injury-prone team like the Chargers.
Yeah, and what happened to the old saying is oh, I don't care who we play. Apparently it does matter, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I would have just been I'd rather have the week off then worry about it. If you have the week off, that's an advantage. Like even if you play Cincinnati, the Bengals play their starters, so they're not rested, and you're going to be rested. So that gives you a big advantage. And it worked out that it didn't matter. So yeah, and I feel like Dallas is the same thing. Dallas had a theoretically they had a chance at the 1 seed. They needed, or even the 2 seed. They needed the Eagles to lose and the Niners to lose. But you have to have like common sense and think like, okay, the Eagles are playing the Giants' third stringers, and the 49ers are playing the Cardinals' backups, like their 4th string quarterback. Like you have to know that these teams aren't going to lose. And if you're Dallas, you lose the game like so pathetically, and now everyone's like so down on them. Everyone's saying they can't win on grass. Like maybe Dak Prescott's like shell shocked from just having just such a terrible game, and his confidence is lost. So yeah, Mike McCarthy did a terrible job too. If I'm McCarthy, I would have just been like, okay, if they win and we lose the chance at the 1 seed, so be it. I'd rather have the week off. That's how I feel about it. What about you?
Yeah, I think that one, at least I understood why they played the starters early. But when you get to halftime and you see the other games aren't going your way, you should probably pull them. And I get it. You want to rest your starters as much as possible at this point in the season, especially where there's only 1 bye that you're playing for. It was different when there was like the 2 seed also had the bye a few years ago for a while, but now that it's just the 1. If you have an outside shot at it, it's kind of like, why not just take the bye week now and prepare for your next week's opponent? Like the Cowboys were pretty locked into playing the Buccaneers. There was only one scenario in which they wouldn't, and it did not play out because they needed too much else to happen. So I probably would have rested my starters if I was Dallas. Now they've got like 0 momentum going into the postseason.
Yeah, seriously. And your dad pointing out why did Tom Brady play so long too? That's like the one thing I can maybe give a pass on, because Brady has 7 Super Bowl rings. So it's like he could just do whatever he wants. Like I feel like whatever he thinks is best for him. I used to be a swim coach back in my college days. And, I used to handle like the elite swimmers different than like the average swimmers. Like the elite swimmers, I wouldn't even like touch beforehand. I'd be like, they're just going to do well regardless. But like the average swimmers, I try to like pep them up beforehand, because I knew like the extra motivation would help. But with Tom Brady, like he knows what's best for him. So like that's like the one thing that I could let slide.
Yeah, I think Todd Bowles probably didn't want to mess with Brady's mojo. Like Brady could have not started that game, but once you get him in the game, it's hard to get him out. I think this time he wanted to continue the momentum they had on offense against the Panthers, because they hadn't really had a good offense throughout the year. But that game against the Panthers, he really connected with Mike Evans. He looked more in sync with Chris Godwin this last week. So I think it was more about just getting in some good reps and feeling good going into the playoffs, as opposed to being like, all right, we're 2 weeks removed from that. Let's not let the offense stagnate. But the fact that he came out of the game, I think he'd played at least 85% of the week 18 snaps, even in meaningless games over the last decade. So the fact that he came out before halftime was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's true. And once he came out, the floodgates opened for Atlanta. Like you saw the Buccaneers had no chance to cover, but outside of if you take away Godwin's fumble, the Buccaneers would have been up 10-7. So not knowing that would made that pick difficult. But if Brady played at least a half or maybe a little bit more, I think the Buccaneers would have covered. But I guess we'll never know for sure. Michael says, Walt, what team do you see making it to the Super Bowl from the AFC? So I'll say this: I have futures on the Chargers, the Bengals, and the Jaguars. Jaguars are like 125-1. I know you had that too. I'm not like sold that's going to happen. And the Chargers and Jaguars obviously play each other, so we'll have at least one team in the next round. I think it'll be the Bengals or the Bills. That's what I think. I think the Chiefs' defense is not good enough. But yeah, you can't ever count out Mahomes. But I think it's going to be Bengals or Bills. What do you think?
I'm in the same boat as you. I think the Bengals and Bills play each other in the divisional round, and the winner of that will go to the Super Bowl. It's kind of the opposite of what happened in Chiefs-Bills from last year, when the loser of that game was at a disadvantage against the Bengals. I think what happens this year is the winner of Bills-Bengals gains the momentum, overtakes the Chiefs, or I think the Chargers might beat the Chiefs if they advance. That's a little more of a hot take, but I think it's possible. I think the Chiefs are pretty vulnerable. Right now, my pick would be the Bengals, but I think it's truly going to be the winner of that game. And I have the same futures bets as you. So No bias towards the Bengals or anything. I just think the way they're playing right now is just at the highest level of the AFC teams.
Yeah. All right. One more comment before we get to the games. Won my season bet on the Browns getting last in the division at plus 600. Congratulations, Parrot. You guys get anything good? I hit my Panthers alt win over on the final field goal there. I didn't think it was going to happen, but it happened. I hit Detroit alt win over and Bears alt win under. Like those are my three biggest things. And unfortunately, I also had the Lions not only to win the Super Bowl at 165-1, I also had them to make the playoffs. I forget what the number was, but it was like it's like 10-1 or something like that. I forget what it was. And I was really hoping for Seattle to lose. So that's one I didn't get, but I hit most of my other ones, so I can't complain. Anything for you?
Yeah, I won the Lions and Panthers normal over win totals. I had those wrapped up before the final week of the season. I did not bet the Steelers over win total, but I did say that I should bet that. So if anyone listened to me, congratulations. I don't apparently listen to myself. But like you, I had the Lions to make the playoffs. And I was a little disappointed because we lost the chance for the Panthers to go to the playoffs. I had a ticket on that when they lost to the Buccaneers, because if they beat the Buccaneers, they would have made the postseason. But the Lions one was so heartbreaking just because that Lions-Packers game, man, the Lions really, I thought Dan Campbell was going to get the most out of them. I really did. I thought they were going to come out and punch them in the mouth, but I thought, Aaron Rodgers was going to make the comeback, make sure the Packers won. But that fourth quarter coaching from Campbell and his defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, and offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, was an absolute clinic. I mean, that lateral on 2nd and 17 off a dump off is one of the guttiest play calls I have seen in a while, and it absolutely paid off. So I was watching that just totally amped up and just in the back of my mind being like, dang, I can't believe the Seahawks pulled off that overtime, because it looked like the Rams were going to have a chance to win, but Baker Mayfield just underthrew that Van Jefferson wide open deep. If he doesn't do that, I think the Rams win. But like you said, we hit a lot of stuff. If we're not going to hit one thing, that's okay. I'm glad that the Lions finished with a winning record, because that kind of proves us right overall.
They had so many bad luck instances earlier in the year. They started 1-6, so it's pretty impressive that they got to 9-8. Great call on your part, though. You had the Lions plus 5.5 in the Super Contest. I didn't have that in my own entry. I did like them though. I bet the Lions plus 5.5. But actually, it was plus 6 by kickoff. But yeah, you had more conviction on that than I did, because I was a little worried that they wouldn't go all out if Seattle won. And they did. So credit to them and credit to you for nailing that pick. And yeah, that was very frustrating. The Seahawks Rams game. Not only is it underthrown, Mayfield threw it so late, it just waited so long to release the ball. It was just so frustrating, and it looked like it was going to be a touchdown. And at the last second, that guy comes in and intercepts it, and then game's over. So yeah, it sucks. But what are you going to do? Let's move on. Before we get to these picks, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. I am wearing my Walter football hoodie that I wear every single week. I should probably get another one of a different color, so to get some variants on here. Also, we're sponsored by Stochastic. You can visit the link in the description as well. You can use promo code Walter Football. That's one word, Walter Football, for 25% off. I've been using them for 4 years for DFS, not just for football, but basketball, hockey, even the World Cup. I played some DFS. I couldn't name a single player in soccer, and yet I was able to cash in tournaments because of the rankings. So I definitely recommend them if you play DFS. All right, let's get to these lines. We had a couple of line movements leading up to this a couple hours ago. So this was 49ers minus 10. So Seahawks to 49ers, it opened minus 10. Past couple hours, it dropped to 9.5. Looks like there's some sharp money on Seattle. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, so I like the 49ers, but I'm not putting any units on this. I just think they match up so well with the Seahawks. It's going to be hard for Geno Smith to consistently throw on them and move the ball. We've already seen this matchup twice, so we have plenty of data on it. I remember that Thursday night game. That one sticks out in my head, where Smith was just under duress from Nick Bosa and Samson Ebukam and Eric Armstead, and just all those guys throughout the game just constantly were in his lap and impacting his throws. And I just can't see a scenario in which the 49ers defense doesn't have a big advantage there and doesn't limit the Seahawks offense. Now, I have as much concern about Brock Purdy as the next person when it comes to when is he finally going to have that performance that really makes him look like a rookie. I think we're going to see that at some point in the postseason, but I think this matchup just benefits the 49ers. They should be able to run it with Christian McCaffrey. We saw Cam Akers run the ball fairly well on them last week with the Rams, and I just think the energy edge is going to be for San Francisco. They're coming off an easy win over the Cardinals. And the Seahawks really had to put a lot into that game against the Rams to get in. And then they still had to wait to know that they could celebrate and say, hey, we are officially going to the postseason. San Francisco obviously has had this locked up for a while. So I think in a way that extra preparation, at least mentally, benefits San Francisco. With all that said, though, I am a little worried about how high this line is because the Seahawks are a competent offense. They have DK Metcalf, they have Tyler Lockett, and they have Kenneth Walker III. I think Geno Smith's going to have trouble during this game, but who's to say this isn't a 17-point game in the fourth quarter and the 49ers say, hey, we're going to take our foot off the gas on defense because there's 8 minutes left and we know we're not going to blow that in full. And then you get a couple late scores from the Seahawks where they end up covering and the 49ers still win comfortably. That's what I'm worried about. But I'm still sticking with the 49ers because I think that this matchup just benefits them too much for me to back the Seahawks. If you look at their previous two games, they beat the Seahawks by a combined 48-20. The first time they played them, Trey Lance got injured in the first quarter. They brought Jimmy Garoppolo in, and he was able to lead them to a double-digit win. The second time they played, it was a Thursday night game that the 49ers only won that by 8, but they dominated throughout that whole game. And Brock Purdy was playing through a minor abdominal injury on a short week. So I think with this normal week and him being at full strength, I think they do a little bit better. So I think they cover, but I'm not betting this because of the backdoor possibility.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it in that Thursday night game. The Niners are up by 15, and then Geno Smith throws a late touchdown to get it to 8. Now, the Niners still covered that spread because the spread was only 3 in Seattle. And obviously, it would cover this spread because it's 9.5. Parrot says it's 10 now. It's 10 in a few sports books, but most of the sports books I'm looking at it's dropped to 9.5. Like it's dropped to 9.5. At like the Heritage, Caesars, South Point, Westgate, Circa. It's down to 9.5. So it looks like the Sharps are on Seattle. I'm on Seattle as well. I'm not betting it though. I'm not betting it for the reasons that you said. I mean, I think this advantage is too big for San Francisco. They could run the ball extremely well. Seattle is the worst against the run. And Seattle wants to run the ball, and the Niners are the best against the run. And then you have the issues that you mentioned about Geno Smith and the pass protection. It's going to be an issue the whole time. Seattle doesn't really get after the quarterback, so Brock Purdy should have a good game. Great point on your part that Purdy was banged up in that first game. I kind of forgot about that. So, everything points to the Niners, but man, I just like what you said at the end. Like I could see the Niners being up by 14, 16, something like that, and then just allowing a touchdown at the end. The Seahawks have the horses to do it with Metcalf and Lockett. And we saw the Raiders have success throwing on the Niners. That's the kind of like the weak point of the Niners defense is the cornerbacks. I think you can beat them with these two receivers. And I think that's what's going to happen in the fourth quarter here. And it's probably what the Sharps are looking at too. I kind of like Seattle. And if you think about it, this line is you're not getting any value with the Niners because the Niners are -3 at Seattle. And these days, you only get 1.5 points for being at home. So that means if the 49ers -3 was correct, and we could argue it wasn't, that would mean this spread would have to be -6. Now, I don't think it was correct because people were still like kind of down on Brock Purdy. They didn't know how good he was. And I think if you were to kind of post a different line for that game, it would probably be like Niners -5.5 or 6 or something like that, like probably 6. So that would mean that this line would be 9. So that's still a little bit short. So I think that I think we're getting like some value with the Seahawks. I just don't want to take it though, because like you said, it's a big disadvantage for Seattle. I just think they're going to get there in garbage time.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that side of it. That's the very reason I'm not betting it. Like I'm a little gun shy because I picked against Georgia in the national championship game, despite them having a big advantage over TCU, like you outlined. So that's kind of why I'm not betting the backdoor cover possibility here.
Yeah.
Because I could see a scenario where San Francisco just gets up like 28-3 or 28-7 or something, and the Seahawks just kind of can't make up enough to cover it. But yeah, the backdoor cover possibility is too great for me to bet on this. There are other better options this week.
Yeah, that they had that the national championship was a bloodbath. Actually, I was putting my son to bed, and I missed the beginning part of the game, and so I came downstairs, and it took him for a while to get to sleep for some reason, and like it was like going to be the middle of the second quarter. I DVR'd it, so I was going to watch it anyway from start to finish. Then I came down and turned on the TV. I expected to see something close, and it was 38-7. I was like, "Oh my god, this is insane!" Yeah, that was crazy. The one difference I'll say though, and this may not mean a lot to many people. Some people won't care. The Sharps were on Georgia in that game, but the Sharps are not on the big favorite here. They're on Seattle. So maybe they changed their minds. Maybe with the 9.5, they take the some Sharps take the Niners. But yeah, either way, we're not. It doesn't sound like we're too enthused about betting this game. So let's just move on to the next one. The Saturday night game, Chargers at the Jaguars. This line is pick 'em in some places. It's Chargers -1 in others, and it opened -1. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Chargers here. We already talked about Brandon Staley. What was he doing last week? Putting Mike Williams and Joey Bosa in harm's way. So I'll be watching the injury report to make sure those guys play. But if they do, I think the Chargers are the right pick here. I just look at this team and I say to myself, this team is really good. There's a reason that some people thought they were a sleeper to make it to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. Some people thought they might unseat the Chiefs in the AFC West coming into the season. I was among those who thought, hey, this is going to be a close, really down to the wire race there. That didn't end up happening, but that was because the Chargers, as always, got very hurt during the season. And they were dealing with injuries at every position, including quarterback. And if you'll remember, the Chargers played the Jaguars earlier in the season, and people will look at that result and say, oh, the Jaguars killed them. But Justin Herbert played that game. He absolutely should not have. He went in questionable after that rib injury on Thursday Night Football against the Chiefs, and he tried to play through it, and he did not look right at all. So he had a few of those games this year where I think he was impacted by that. He wasn't as good as he normally would have been, but this team is just really strong on offense. Sure, the right side of their offensive line is a little weak. Zion Johnson's had an up and down rookie year, and their right tackle's nothing to write home about. And I know they're without Rashawn Slater in this one too, so that offensive line's a little shaky, but the Jaguars' defense is porous enough that I think the Chargers are going to be able to pass the ball against them. Like Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, even Gerald Everett. These guys are just going to be too much for the Jaguars to cover. And we've seen the Jaguars struggle to stop really good offenses this year. A lot of people aren't remembering that right now because the Jaguars have faced 3 kind of cupcakey matchups going into this postseason. They played, I think, in order, the Jets, or it might be the Texans, Jets, and Titans with Josh Dobbs at quarterback. So it's kind of like, that's not exactly a great barometer for what type of offense they're facing in the Chargers. I think the Chargers offense is going to be able to go blow for blow with the Jaguars offense, which has been good this year, but also Trevor Lawrence has looked shaky at times. He missed a wide open touchdown against the Titans. Like, that was just hard to believe how badly he overthrew it from not that far away. So I think he might make a mistake in this one. And I'll let you talk about this more, but the Chargers defense with Joey Bosa on the field is it's really a different animal. So I think the Chargers find a way to win this one. So at -1, I like them. I'll probably be on them for a couple of units. We'll look to see where this line goes and where the injuries end up. But as long as Williams and Bosa are playing, I think the Chargers are the right side.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Williams playing. Like, if he's out for this game, that's not going to change my opinion at all because, first of all, Joshua Palmer has shown well this year, and he's proven that he could be a good second receiver. I don't like him as a number one, but like if Keenan Allen is there and he's obviously not hurt, I think the Chargers offense can function just as well, especially when they're going against a bad defense like the Jaguars. The Jaguars pass defense is pretty brutal. So I think it's gonna be fine. Like in a matchup like against the Chiefs or the Bills, I think they would need Mike Williams, but I don't think that's the case here. Joey Bosa is super important though, and we'll see what happens with him. It sounds like he's going to play because, like you said it before, like he's going to practice this week, although he's a little banged up. But as long as he's not like DMP limited, I'm going to be on the Chargers and I'm going to bet them. And you kind of touched on this, but like the edge rusher is so important, like the elite edge rusher. We were on the Steelers for the second half of the year almost every week. Regrettably not. I mean, regrettably kind of faded them in the final week. But outside of that, we were on the Steelers because they got TJ Watt back, during the middle part of the season, and they finished 8-2 with TJ Watt on the field, and they went from a 30th ranked pass defense to top 6. Like that's how much he meant to that defense. And I feel like Joey Bosa is the same. If you look at games where Joey Bosa has played full games this year for the Chargers are allowing 17.7 points per game. Without Bosa, or with Bosa like getting knocked out early, they're allowing 23.4 points per game. It's like almost a touchdown difference for one player. And yet this line, you're never going to see the line move that much for an elite pass rusher. You will for a quarterback, but not for someone like Joey Bosa or TJ Watt. And that just baffles me because these guys are so important to their defense. Assuming they have him here, I just don't see how the Jaguars are going to block him and Khalil Mack because they're not going to have Cam Robinson. That's such a big loss. And, they haven't really been punished for it because, like you said, that they play some cupcake teams, and the Chargers are a huge step up in competition. I would argue like maybe the Cowboys and comparable. That's the last good team that the Jaguars played, and the Jaguars won that game, but they needed a miracle comeback to win that game. They were down big, and I think that they could be down big in this game. Now they could come back again. The Chargers tend to play down to the competition, but I think as long as they have Bosa healthy, I think they're going to win this game. I like them quite a bit here, probably like 2 or 3 units worth. But like I said, we'll see what happens with Bosa's status and also Williams. All that's like far less significant.
Yeah, I agree with you that Williams isn't as important this time because of the Jaguars' pass defense, but that Joey Bosa is going to be absolutely huge. And I think, like, to your point, the Chargers do often play down or up to their competition. But I think because they're on the road here and because everyone's calling this kind of a coin flip type game, even the line at Pick'em seems like Pick'em or -1 seems like a coin flip. I think they're going to be able to take this seriously enough and be like, hey, guys, we don't really have room to not show up right away this time, unless Brandon Staley forgets what week it is and then just starts the backups. It's like, oh, I thought I could rest my starters. But, we'll see where he ends up. But I think we're on the right side here with the Chargers, provided the Bosa is all good.
That would be funny if he randomly just starts Chase Daniels like, oh, this game doesn't mean anything. It's just like, okay, wow, you're completely clueless. Like we thought you were bad, but you're really bad. I would love to see it. Although my Chargers future bet would not agree. Just for the lulls, I guess. All right, let's move on to the Sunday games. We have 3 Sunday games. This first one's at 1:00. Dolphins at the Bills. So this opened -11, and it was -11 when I made my pick earlier today. And in the past couple hours, this dropped to 9.5. And I wonder if it's because we got some Tua Tagovailoa news. I didn't see anything, but as I've said many times on the show, the sharp bettors who move the line tend to have some great inside info, so they may know something about Tua being able to play in this game. So with that in mind, who do you like here?
It's either got to be Tua news or maybe Teddy news too. I don't know that
Maybe
Bridgewater would move the line this much, but him compared to Skylar Thompson, even if Teddy Bridgewater's injured, I think that's probably an upgrade over Thompson right now. I'm a little torn on this pick because we don't know the quarterback situation. On the one hand, if Teddy Bridgewater's around, I want to preface this by saying I don't think Tua Tagovailoa is going to play. I just don't think he's going to be cleared in time, and they're going to take a super careful approach with him. I read a report that he had some memory issues in the initial aftermath of this concussion. I think it was from Barry Jackson of I forget which Miami newspaper it is. It's either the Sun Sentinel or the Herald. So whichever one, I apologize for not knowing off the top of my head. But he said there were some memory issues and they're working not to overwhelm Tagovailoa because of that. And obviously he had the concussion earlier in the year. So I would assume this line move is more news about Teddy Bridgewater. I like the Dolphins with Teddy Bridgewater in. I love Teddy. He covers the spread constantly. According to my numbers, which may be slightly off, but this was the last time I updated this. He's 43, 21, and 1 against the spread in his starts. And, this is a high line. So you would anticipate that if he's able to play, he should be able to cover this. Now, the one caveat to that is he's dealing with an injury to his throwing hand. And that's just such a massive detriment to any quarterback. Like, it's going to impact his grip strength, how he throws the ball, because it's his pinky here. So, if he's throwing the ball with 4 fingers, that just is not a good recipe against a good defense. So we're really going to have to wait and see on this practice report and see which quarterback is going to be available. If it is Bridgewater, I'm probably going to end up on the Dolphins, provided that this line doesn't fall below 7. My reason being is that Bridgewater can distribute the ball to the likes of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, even if his hand's a bit banged up. I think they'll figure out a way to kind of keep him throwing short and accurate and just, get the ball out of your hands into the hands of your playmakers. And last time, or both times the Dolphins have played the Bills this year, they have run the ball very well. So I think they would come with a run-heavy game plan against the Bills defense that has been spotty against the run. That's their big weakness. So I think that Miami could definitely keep it within a touchdown if Bridgewater starts. But if we're talking about Thompson and we're getting an 11-point spread, I don't like the idea of starting a rookie 7th or going with a rookie 7th round pick in a playoff start on the road in a colder environment than he's used to, especially since Thompson hasn't really shown me that he can do a whole lot on offense. Like, he moved the ball against the Vikings defense, but the Vikings have one of the worst defenses in terms of yardage allowed in the NFL. The Bills are better than that for sure. So I think I would side with the Bills if Thompson starts. So that's where I'm at. If it's Bridgewater, I'm going Dolphins. If not, I'm going to probably go with the Bills. And then if Tua starts, I'm going to have to reassess this entire plan.
Yeah, I don't know. I think obviously the memory loss is pretty scary and significant here, but I think based on the line movement, like this move through 10, I think it has to be Tua at that point. Like, I don't think Teddy Bridgewater would command such a line move, especially given that, his condition's like so weird because I guess you don't know until he practices because it's a Tuesday. The Dolphins haven't, or I guess they have practice, right? Tuesday. Yeah. No, it's a Sunday game. So no, they haven't practiced yet. So yeah, I don't know how anyone would know about Teddy's finger, given that they haven't practiced, but Tua doesn't need to practice. He needs to be cleared from protocol. So, I think that I think they may know something about Tua. That's my guess. It could be completely wrong. It could be someone making a speculative bet. That could be a 2, and maybe just buying back if Tua doesn't play. I could see that being the case. But here's how I'm going to handle this game. So if Tua plays, I really like the Dolphins. We saw the Dolphins compete extremely well with the Bills twice this year. They beat them the first time. Granted, that was in like super hot conditions in Miami. The second time they were in a shootout. Everyone thought the Dolphins were going to be struggling. Like every podcast I listen to, they're like, "Oh, the Dolphins in cold weather, they won't be able to handle it." They almost won the game. And the weather in this game won't be extreme. I saw like 28 degrees, but like light wind, so it's not gonna be too bad. It's actually, I think it was like worse that Saturday game that they played. I think it was week 15. So I really like the Dolphins at Tua, especially given that Tua gives them a better chance to run the ball because, well, first of all, the Bills will have to respect the pass a lot more of Tua, and second, Tua is going to keep the game close. So the Dolphins should be able to run more with Tua. If it's Bridgewater with an injured finger, though, or Skylar Thompson, I'm going to have a far less interest in the Dolphins. In fact, I'm probably going to be on the Bills. Definitely with Thompson. I just don't think he can engage in a shootout with the Bills. I think the Bills are going to just going to have too much offensive firepower. And I think that they're just going to just run away with this game and the Dolphins are going to run the ball. With Teddy, though, it's trickier because we don't know his finger issue condition. So we're going to have to like lean on practice reports, but you can't really trust those. But it's going to be so tough to bet on Teddy despite his great spread record, because if he has an injured finger, I just don't want to bet on that. Like, I hate betting on injured quarterbacks, especially when they have an injury to one of their fingers. It's just such a bad track record that I just couldn't do it. So like I said, good. Have to wait on the report for the quarterbacks. And hopefully it's Tua and we get a great game. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a blowout.
Yeah, and the thing with Tua too, I just looked for news. I didn't see any outright. Not at least not from anywhere that popped up right away when I looked. But the thing with Tua, the Dolphins' offense averages 25.5 points per game when Tua starts. And in 4 starts without him, they are averaging about, I think, 16.7 points per game. It's somewhere in the 16-point range. So Tua makes almost a 9-point difference by himself. No matter how much this line moves, it could move through the key number of 6 or 7. That would be what I'd be on the lookout for. And obviously, I don't think that would happen without knowing that Tua was going to start. But if he ends up starting, so long as this line doesn't come plummeting down, I think that Miami's going to be the right play because they will be able to keep it close. They are just such a better team with Tua. It's kind of crazy how valuable he is compared to what the league-wide perception of his value is among fans.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of leads into this question from CHR Wedge. What does Miami do in the offseason? Draft a quarterback or pick up free agent Tom Brady or another free agent quarterback, or stick with Tua and his injury history, injury issues? So, I mean, if Tua didn't have injury issues, obviously you stick with him. But the problem is he hasn't been able to stay healthy for an entire year throughout his career. So you need a better backup option. Now, maybe if the problem is Teddy's also banged up all the time. I feel like they need a safer number 2 quarterback who's not going to get injured. That's where I would go. I don't know who's available. It's going to sound bad, but if Matt Ryan wants to keep playing, I feel like he'd be a good backup for Tua, just because he's so reliable. I know he's been a turnover machine this year, but with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, he'll suddenly look a lot better. So I think he would be ideal as a backup, someone like that, someone who can be a steady hand for 3 or 4 games and not get injured. So that's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think you have to keep Tua with how he's played this year and just hope, hey, he's going to stay healthy. At some point, he's going to put together a full season. Or maybe, if you keep him cleaner in that pocket, he's not going to get hurt as much. Or you just got to tell him to. You got to be just get rid of the ball and don't take hits. Don't be running around back there. It'll take him changing his playing style. But I do think they have to keep him as their number 1. This offense is just really good with him. I would keep an eye on someone like Gardner Minshew. I know he lost those 2 games with the Eagles, but he had them very competitive against the Cowboys, and they lost to the Saints without Lane Johnson, I believe, or Lane Johnson didn't play most of that game. Yeah. Lane Johnson's a huge difference maker, but Minshew would be that type of guy that you could say, all right, I need you to start 4 games, and he probably wins you at least 2 of them if you surround him with good weapons. You got to be sure your protection's good, but you got to do that anyway for Tua. So if I'm the Dolphins, I would pursue Minshew and really try to upgrade the offensive line this offseason, or just continue to do so, I guess.
Yeah, or pray that Teron Armstead can stay healthy, which hasn't been the case. Golden Glide is saying Tua is set to start. He's been cleared by his coach. That's what Golden Goliath is saying, not me. I haven't seen that at all. And I mean, like I said, hopefully that's the case, because I'd love to see a great game. But yeah, I haven't seen anything. Have you? I haven't seen anything.
I really haven't. I've been on the lookout. I have not seen anything about Tua yet. I think today's Tuesday. I think McDaniel said that there'd be more clarity on Wednesday, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, this might be a speculative bet, or I really think someone knows something. Remember that Titans line movement against the Texans, where it moved from 7 to 3, and we're on air as it happened. We're someone knows something about Tannehill, right? And we didn't. I looked, and there was nothing about Tannehill, and apparently someone knew something, because Tannehill was ruled out the next day. So these guys are on top of it. These guys who bet a lot of money move the lines. They have inside sources with teams. And yeah, I mean, Charlie Campbell has great inside sources too. So it is possible to have sources within teams that give you good information. So yeah, I have a feeling Tua is going to start this game based on the line movement, but I guess we'll see.
Here's open.
Yeah, seriously. All right, this is the middle game of the Sunday slate. Giants at the Vikings. This line opened -3. It's remained -3. Obviously, these teams played 3 weeks ago, and it was a 3-point game. So that's what the line is. So who do you like in this game?
I am so disappointed that this is a matchup. I really didn't want this game. I really didn't want it, just because we just saw it, and I don't know. I was hoping that someone like the Lions or Packers would sneak in as the 7th seed, and we'd get to see the Vikings against them in a divisional match. Anyway, my wants aside, I'm going to be on the Giants here. The Vikings, look, I know they're 13-4 this year, but they are 11-0 in one-score games, and you can look at that as like a positive for sure. Their coaching has been pretty good in those tight games this year, but they've also been lucky. And at some point, luck usually course corrects in one direction or the other. I think this could be the time that finally happens. I know the Giants aren't explosive, but their offense did really well against Minnesota, or did fairly well against Minnesota the first time they played. Minnesota gives up the second most yards of any team in the league. I think they're like 388.7 yards per game, I believe. That's second to only the Lions, who really were terrible in the first half of the year and then have got much better down the stretch. But I think Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are going to be able to move the ball. That should allow them to keep pace with the Vikings. I think the Vikings offense will score enough in this one to make this interesting and just make it really, really close. But I think the Giants could win this one outright. If you look at that game they played against the Vikings, they outgained Minnesota 445 to 353 and averaged 6.7 yards per play, while the Vikings averaged 5 yards per play. So, what was the difference in that game? The Giants lost the turnover battle 2-0. The Giants do not often lose the turnover battle this year, which sounds weird to say about a Daniel Jones coach team. Only one team in the NFL had fewer turnovers than the Giants last year. Or this past season. It was the Lions, believe it or not. Lions had 15 turnovers. Giants had 16, and 2 of them came in that game against the Vikings. So I think that the Giants are going to find a way to get their revenge and at least cover this spread here, and I think they could win it outright.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And we saw this, like I said, there was a 3-point game at the end. The Vikings needed that last second field goal to avoid overtime, and they beat the Giants. And the Giants, one of many teams to outgain the Vikings and lose this year. The classic one is that the Vikings were outgained by 224 yards against the Dolphins, third string quarterback, and they won that game because Jalen Waddle fumbled a couple of times, and the Dolphins had that one drive where they had like 150 yards of penalties or something like that, like something crazy. They had 150 yards on the drive and they didn't score because they had so many penalties. That's what it was. It's like one of many instances this year where the Vikings have gotten so lucky. You can just like name like a lot of them. Like week 3, they lose to the Lions. They're down 10 in the fourth quarter. They lose to the Lions if Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift don't get hurt. Against the Patriots on Thanksgiving, the Patriots had a lot of screw ups on special teams, which I guess we could have seen coming in the finale. And otherwise, I think the Patriots outplayed the Vikings in that game. In London, the Saints didn't have Alvin Kamara, and they're playing Andy Dalton, making his first start of the year. And the Vikings almost lost that game. They needed a field goal at the end to win. Just so many instances this year where the Vikings could have lost and they didn't, and they got so lucky. They're the only 13-win team in NFL history with a negative point differential. It's insane. Like, how do you have a negative point differential at 13-4? It's just crazy. We saw them in their last real game. I'm not counting Chicago playing Nathan Peterman. In their last real game, they were down 41-10 by the time the Packers pulled their starters. And in that game, the Vikings lost Brian O'Neill, who's a fantastic right tackle, and they also lost their backup center. So they might be starting their backup right tackle and third string center in this game. Now, maybe their starting center, Garrett Bradbury, comes back, but he was dealing with a back injury. And so, back injuries, as I know, I have back problems all the time. Like back injuries, like they're really brutal and they're tough to come back from, and they can aggravate themselves like pretty easily. So I wouldn't trust Bradbury to be 100% if he comes back. So the Vikings offensive line is going to be a lot worse than it was in the last matchup against the Giants, and the Giants get after the quarterback pretty well. I know they blitz a lot to do it, but they're still top 5 in pressure rate. And Kirk Cousins' completion percentage when he's kept clean in the pocket, 72.4%. When he's under pressure, it's like 50.5%. It's like such a huge drop off. And Cousins is going to see a lot more pressure without O'Neal and with the third string center possibly, or his starting center injured. So yeah, I think everything points to the Giants here. I'd be surprised if the Vikings won in a blowout. And so I think that the two most likely results of this game are in some order: Giants by 3, Vikings by 3, and we get a win and the push with the +3. Seems like a no-brainer. I made this line personally, Vikings -1.5. So we're getting value with the Giants as well. So Giants are my second favorite pick of the week. We'll discuss my favorite pick later.
Yeah, I think getting the 3 just makes all the difference here. And like you said, I hate betting on teams that have banged up offensive lines if I can help it. There needs to be other significant advantages or incorrect lines for that to ever really amount to me wanting to back them. So with Brian O'Neal out, that's just such a big downgrade. Like, he's a really good tackle. I've always liked him. So yeah, without him and with the potential third string center, and it's going to be a lot harder for them to block Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah, and there's a good point about RK saying Giants didn't have McKinney or Adoree Jackson in that game, so that's something else going in the Giants' favor. Matthias is saying the Packers got a lucky kickoff return. It's true, and some lucky. I don't know about lucky calls, but what stuck out to me about that game was that the Vikings had a lot of issues snapping the ball with their third string center. So it's going to be better, now that either that third string center is going to have more time to practice, or Bradbury's going to be back. But like I said, Bradbury may not be 100%, and O'Neal missing is going to be so huge. I'm just saying Cousins is great under pressure. He's not. Like, you just look at his metrics. His completion percentage drops 22 points when he's under pressure. Like that is, I think, the biggest disparity in the NFL for any starting quarterback. So it is. I think it's a big factor here not having O'Neal. It's just colossal. Like, if O'Neal were playing, I would be less confident in the Giants, but not having him is just massive.
Yep, O-line injuries, man. They're the most important thing that people never want to talk about.
That's true. Yeah, I said that edge rushers aren't factoring in enough, but yeah, you're right. Like, offensive line, especially when you have multiple offensive line injuries, it's just so hard to come back from that. Anyway, let's move on to the Sunday night game. We have Ravens at the Bengals. This line opened up Bengals -6.5. In the past couple of hours, it moved to 7. So that's to a key number. So I wonder if people know of some bad news regarding Lamar Jackson. So they haven't practiced yet. So I guess we'll have to see, but someone may know something once again. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Ravens here even without Lamar Jackson. Like, I would wait for this line to move. I'm anticipating that he's not going to play. I just don't think he's going to be healthy enough for this. But I just look at this game, and I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, the Bengals have looked really good lately, and they're my pick currently to come out of the AFC, so I don't disagree with that. But I think it's going to be tough for them because they just beat the Ravens literally last week. And they had to, I don't want to say they emptied their bag or anything, but they were in a situation where if they did not win, it was going to be a coin flip to decide where this game was played, as opposed to it just being in Cincinnati, because Cincinnati was the higher seed. I know that the NFL couldn't make every scenario fair after canceling that Bills versus Bengals game, but the coin flip thing was a little weird to me. I don't know why they put that provision in and just didn't say, hey, the Bengals won the division because they played one less game. Everything about it was silly, but the Ravens rested their starters anyway because they knew they were probably going to play the Bengals either way. So they've shown less of their hands to the Bengals than what the Bengals have shown the Ravens last week. So I think, the Bengals are going to have to come up with an entirely new game plan, while the Ravens have probably been in the background working on their game plan for this game the last couple of weeks. And, they've been able to watch plenty of tape on Cincinnati, and we'll get to evaluate what they did and didn't do well against them last week. Whereas Cincinnati's going to have to look back and say, all right, well, we played Anthony Brown, and there's almost certainly going to be a different quarterback, whether it's Lamar Jackson or Tyler Huntley, barring some catastrophic news about Huntley's shoulder, which I think he just sat out with tendonitis. So the fact that we're getting all the key numbers with the Ravens makes me feel good about them keeping this close. I know that the Ravens haven't been good on offense of late. They haven't scored more than 17 points with Huntley as the quarterback, but I think they'll score enough to keep it close, and their defense is going to have a much better game this time around because they'll be very familiar with what Burrow just did to them, be able to make him a little bit more uncomfortable. We saw them hold the Bengals to 17 points earlier in the season. I don't think they hold them to that few, but I'm expecting more of like a 21-17 type game, or maybe 24-20 or 23-20. These AFC North games typically are close. So give me Baltimore with all the key numbers to keep it close, and this to really spark the Bengals in a close game and say, hey, we got to step it up if we're going to beat the Bills and the Chiefs en route to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we're on the same side. And the Ravens typically keep games close regardless. John Harbaugh, as an underdog of 7 or more in his career, is 10-5 against the spread. And 2 of those losses were with Jimmy Clausen at quarterback. So I think you can discard those. So actually, like when I was looking that up, I forgot Clausen was starting for the Ravens at some point in 2015. So 10-3 against the spread outside of those Clausen games, which is pretty good. And then on the flip side, you look at Joe Burrow's spread record, which is phenomenal when he's favored by less than 7 or he's an underdog. He's 31-11 against the spread as long as he's not favored by a touchdown or more. When he's favored by a touchdown or more, he's only 3-4 against the spread. And I think you make a great point about, the Bengals kind of showing, maybe tipping their hand a little bit last week. I don't know if they ran a vanilla game plan because like outside of those drives where they didn't score touchdowns, they scored 21 points off Anthony Brown turnovers. They only scored 6 points otherwise. And I think they I don't know if it was a vanilla game plan, but like Joe Burrow just didn't look right. Like he missed a couple of throws. He had Jamar Chase for a touchdown. He missed him. He had T Higgins open for a touchdown. He missed them. And then T Higgins dropped the deep pass. And Higgins didn't look right. He caught like 2 out of 10 targets or something like that. So the Bengals just weren't quite right last week, and I expect them to play better. But I also expect the Ravens to play better, especially knowing that they'll have some advantage. Like they were just collecting data against the Bengals the entire time. Like they didn't show anything, and I think that's a big advantage for sure. So yeah, I think this game's gonna be close. It was 19-17 the first time, and then if you take out the turnovers from last week, it would have been 16-10 Ravens. So everything says it's going to be a close game. I just wonder though, with the line movement going to 7, with the sharp, it's probably sharp movement, I would think. I wonder if they know something. So if Jackson's out and Huntley's banged up, that gives me some pause because I don't want to back an injured quarterback, kind of sort of like the Miami game. In fact, like these games are pretty similar. But if it's Jackson or Huntley, and like we get the sense that Huntley's close to 100%, I'm going to be a Baltimore for sure. So I may bet this game. I may bet like a 2 or 3 units on Baltimore. And it's going to be tough to bet Cincinnati. The only way I would do that if it's one, if it's Anthony Brown, or 2, if we have a good sense that Huntley is not going to be 100%.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. If we get word that Huntley's not 100%, I'm not going to want to back the Ravens, or not at least 90%. But I think he's going to be healthy enough. I think the only reason he was held out last week is because his shoulder had been bothering him at one point, and they figured, all right, let's get him this extra week. Did what the Chargers did not do and rested their current starter. So yeah, I think that move to 7 might be more about just like confirmation that, hey, Lamar Jackson isn't going to be playing. Because if I remember last week, the line opened up at Bengals -7 against, when it was projected to be against Huntley. We knew that Jackson wasn't coming back. And then it moved to, I think, 9 with Brown in. So I'm wondering if this correction was just to say, all right, we pretty much know Jackson's not in. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on Huntley throughout the week. That will matter a lot.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's not like it went to 9 or something like that, or 9.5. So I think you're probably right. Matthias is saying about Kirk Cousins. What is other stats under pressure? You pick one stat and ride it all season long. I mean, a drop in completion percentage of 22 points is pretty significant. If you want another stat of Kirk Cousins, his turnover worthy plays percentage when kept clean is 2.5%. When he's under pressure is 4.4%. So I don't know where that is in comparison to other quarterbacks. I imagine that number is going to be higher too. But I mean, Kirk Cousins doesn't handle pressure well. He just hasn't like throughout his career. So I don't know what else I could say about that. CHR Wedge asking, will the Ravens be giving Lamar an insane new huge contract, or have lessons been learned from Wilson at Denver and Murray at Arizona? I imagine that, the Ravens are a pretty smart team. So I think that they're going to be pretty careful with Lamar Jackson. I think they're going to maybe like go down the avenue that the Redskins did with Kirk Cousins, and when they gave him like a couple of franchise tags. That's what I would do, because like Lamar Jackson's so injury prone. I just don't know how you give him a big contract. Like if he didn't have these injury concerns, I would be on board with giving him a big money deal. But you just can't count on him to stay healthy. It's like the same thing with Kyler Murray. You just can't count on these guys to stay healthy. So it's hard to give him such a big deal.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is they'll slap him with the tag this offseason and say, hey, you got to stay healthy. If you stay healthy, we'll give you a long-term deal. And then if he does, they'll probably bake in some a ton of guarantees, because you have to do it that way now, but they'll probably have some outs for injury, and it might not be as long-term as some of the other ones out there. But yeah, I think they're going to play the franchise tag dance, if you will. And they really got to add some talent around him, though, because at receiver, they have Rashad Bateman and nothing else. So when Lamar Jackson's out of the lineup, that offense's execution plummets because Tyler Huntley has no one to throw to. So they've got to go out and get someone like DeAndre Hopkins might be on the trade block. If you go get him and have Rashad Bateman, suddenly your offense is a lot different. Now, I know Lamar Jackson prefers throwing to tight ends, it seems, and he makes a lot of plays with his legs. But Greg Roman's got to bend that offense a little bit to say, hey, like, you got to get the ball to these receivers if we get you talent. So we'll see what happens there. But I agree with you. I think it's a tag dance, basically.
Yeah, he really missed Marquise Brown earlier in the year when he was healthy, and it's kind of funny that Marquise Brown would go to Arizona and then Hopkins in this scenario would go to Baltimore. It's kind of weird. The Baltimore gets the better end of that deal, I think, but it really depends on Lamar Jackson staying healthy. So we had Harrod saying, I think this is an excellent tease game. I don't see the Bengals losing this. I think it's a fine tease play. I like two others more. So we'll get to that after the final game. I'll talk about my favorite teaser. And Justin Palmier saying Tua's missed games also coincide with Armstead missing. Yeah, Taron Armstead's injury is also huge too. So to go back to the Dolphins game for a second, like if Armstead's healthy and Tua's playing, like I love the Dolphins. If Tua's playing and Armstead's out, I like them a little bit less. It helps that Von Miller's out, so Buffalo's pass rush isn't as strong as we once thought it would be. But Armstead's so huge for that team because the Dolphins are already missing the right tackle. So having him on the field is just super important. So that's another injury to watch out for as well.
Definitely.
Okay, the Monday night game, the final Monday night game until August, probably late August. It's kind of crazy. Cowboys at the Buccaneers. This line opened up Cowboys -3. Sharps took it down to 2.5. This is my top pick of the week. In fact, this is my pick of the month. So hopefully we agree on this. Who do you like in this game?
I'm going to guarantee that we do without knowing your pick, but I'm on the Buccaneers here. Look, this is one of the classic scenarios where people go, oh, a losing team is in the playoffs. Well, they're probably not going to win this one. Makes sense that the Cowboys should be favored on the road over them, right? Not exactly. It's not that perfect. I know I've heard a lot of buzz about the Cowboys being one of the better teams in the NFC and being like the third team with the chance to go to the Super Bowl, depending on, you got the Eagles, the 49ers, and some people are picking the Cowboys. I do not see that at all. I think that they are overrated right now. I think that they're going to have to figure out a way to beat this Tampa Bay team that matches up really well with them. I know this isn't the same as their week one game against them because both teams, have had additions and subtractions due to injuries, but Tampa Bay held Dallas to 3 points in that game. Now, I know there's no Shaq Barrett, but Tampa Bay's defense is still built pretty well to combat this Dallas team. Like, they're going to be healthier now. They're going to have Vita Vea out there. They're going to have Akeem Hicks. So they're going to slow the running game for Dallas. And if you take the running game away and make Dak Prescott beat you, he is prone to, just having complete implosion games. I picked the Commanders last week. at +7 against the Cowboys, because I was like, I don't know. I feel like this is a good spot. Like the Commanders are playing for nothing, and the Cowboys might choke under pressure. Lo and behold, they did, and I didn't think they would lose outright or anything, but they did. I think this is another spot where all the pressure is going to be on them. They're playing this team with a losing record that everyone's gonna say, oh, they should beat. Oh, the NFC South shouldn't even have a playoff representative here. Why are they in? But the Lions are out. Like, the Lions have a better record than them. Why do we even bother with divisions? But the fact of the matter is, this Tampa Bay team has Tom Brady, and he's the great equalizer on offense. I mean, he's been to so many Super Bowls. Like, we don't have to go over his entire playoff record, but the list of credentials he has to potentially win this game is enormous. And the last time they were underdogs in a playoff game, I'm pretty sure, was the season the Bucs won the Super Bowl. They were an underdog, I think, in every game, and they obviously won every game as a wild card. So, I mean, I don't get why they're not at least pick them at home. So we're getting some great line value here. And I know some people will say, well, they're not well coached, the Bucs, and their offense has sputtered at times this year, but Brady was getting in rhythm with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans before the end of the season. They looked a little bit cleaner there, and with the defense getting healthier, I think they could beat the Cowboys outright. So when we're getting 3, I love this. At 2.5, I still really like it. I've got 1 to 3 units penciled in, probably be on the higher end of that projection. I might even buy up to the 3 right now and just lock in 3 units and see where it goes from there. But I might even put a money line bet on the Bucs. This is probably one of my favorite plays of the week as well. Just give me the Bucs.
Yeah, you can look over my right shoulder and maybe have a guess on who I had took. It's Red Elemental Blast as an old red card. So Tom Brady's an old quarterback wearing a red jersey. So that's for those who know, like there might be like one person who may have guessed that. But yeah, I love the Buccaneers. I think they win outright. And I actually, I was talking to our friend Quacky Takes during our call Friday night before we submitted our Super Contest picks, and I told him I was going to take the Buccaneers for my pick of the month. Just kind of guess what the spread would be right away. And he was like, "What do you think it's going to be? Like 5.5 or 6?" And I was like, "No, I think it's going to be 3.5." And I thought that. I thought that would be like a hint about like where the sharp money would go, and it opened 3 is actually like lower than I thought it would be. But I think people think that the spread's too low, given that there's public money on Dallas, and I think that's incorrect. I actually made this line pick them. And I have these teams like pretty close to each other in power rankings, and kind of like why is that? Like Dallas is such a much better record than Tampa Bay this year. So there's a few things. Like first of all, Tampa is going to be a lot better than people remember them. Like if you ask like the average like casual bettor like throws $20 on a game like randomly, like what do you think about the Buccaneers this year? They're probably going to say like, oh, Tom Brady sucks. They're going to lose right away. And Tom Brady was bad like in the middle part of the year, like for sure. But the problem was that he didn't have any pass protection. Tristan Wirfs was out for a while. Donovan Smith was out for a while. They didn't have their center. Luke Goedeke was missing some games too. Now they've gotten back in the past couple of weeks. They've gotten back Donovan Smith and Tristan Wirfs in the final 2 weeks of the regular season. Actually, well, not the final week, but Tristan Wirfs played in that week 17 game against Carolina, and so did Donovan Smith. And like their presence was so huge. Like Tom Brady, for the first time in a while, had so much pass protection, and that was why he was able to hit Mike Evans for a few touchdowns. And now he's probably going to have Ryan Jensen on the field for the first time. Jensen's a really good center. He was been out since week one, and he's coming off injured reserve, and he's gonna make the offensive line even better. So like suddenly Tampa is going from having one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL to having one of the best offensive lines in the NFL in the span of a few weeks. Like that's going to make all the difference in the world for the Buccaneers. And I think the Buccaneers are like, to me, like people are like heading into the playoffs, like people are like, oh, I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers. I was like saying like I don't want to see Tampa with a complete offensive line and Tom Brady having all the pass protection to hit Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Like I would be terrified to play Tampa right now, and they should, like, based on the personnel, they should be favored in this game. And you go to Dallas, like they're the opposite. Like where they had good offensive line play earlier in the year, they suddenly do not. because their center Tyler Biotish is out. He may come back, but like he's coming off a high ankle sprain. I don't trust him to be 100%. They also lost their right tackle Terrence Steele, so they're probably going to be down 2 offensive linemen. And you kind of like look at how Dallas has played since their bye. They crushed Minnesota, and everyone remembers that. But outside of that game, they lost to the Packers back when Aaron Rodgers was not playing well. They almost lost to the Texans. They lost to the Jaguars. Against the Giants on Thanksgiving, they were down at halftime. Against the Colts entering the fourth quarter, they're up only 21-19. And in the finale, they got crushed by the Redskins. It wasn't even close, 26-6. I think that's kind of a harbinger of what's going to happen in this game. I think the Buccaneers take it to them. It would not surprise me if the Buccaneers won by at least 2 touchdowns. And if you doubt me, just look back at week 1. The Buccaneers beat the Cowboys 19-3 in Dallas.
Yeah, it just you put the evidence right out in front of you right there. Like the Cowboys have had some shaky losses or shaky close games down the stretch, and I agree with you. I think I was mulling over whether Tampa could potentially make a run to the Super Bowl. I don't think they get that far. I never rule anything out with Tom Brady, but it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if they got to the NFC Championship game, depending on the path that they end up with. I think they might have trouble beating the Eagles, but if they ended up playing the 49ers in the second round, like I know that's a great defense, but Tom Brady versus Brock Purdy at the quarterback position, like they might be able to sneak through to that NFC Championship game. So yeah, Brady, I think is going to be in good shape for this one. He's been waiting all year to get back to the playoffs and have a chance to win. People are counting him out, and you just can't count Brady out.
Yeah, for sure. Golden Goliath asking 5 units, actually 8 units is my pick of the month. I would say this: you can still get +3, -124. At least you could have like a couple hours ago at Bookmaker. Can't like tweet out the links or anything, or because we'll get banned or something from YouTube. But yeah, you can shop around and get a +3. I know there's like a +3 -130 at BetUS. So you can definitely get the 3, and it's so important to get the 3. 14% of NFL games land on 3, and in like closely lined games from 0 to 3.5, 20% of games land on 3. So 1 out of 5 chance you'll get screwed over with that 3 if you take the 2.5. So definitely pay up for 3. Also 6 and 7, but to lesser degrees. That's important, but don't pay up for any other number. We had a couple of comments here. Still want to get to CHR Wedge saying deepest condolences to Jacob for his beloved Patriots not making the playoffs. Life's not fair. Is baby goat Mac Jones the right man for the future? What do you think?
Yeah, thank you for the condolences. It's okay. I didn't expect them to make it after the play in Oakland or Las Vegas, I guess. But I think that it's impossible to evaluate Mac Jones based off this season. And if you look at his 2 years, his first year, he looked pretty good. Like, you're not going to say he's like a world-changing quarterback from that first year, but you look at that and you say, hey, this guy's a capable enough starter. Let's see what he can do. Then this year, you put Matt Patricia and Joe Judge in charge of his offense. He can't do anything. The blocking scheme changed, and everyone did much worse in that regard. He doesn't have a true number 1 receiver. As much as I love Jacoby Myers, he's not like again, DeAndre Hopkins type. If you had DeAndre Hopkins there and Mac Jones was struggling that much, you might say, all right, well, that's not a good sign. Or if you couldn't get him the ball, it's a bad sign. But they need to add a number 1 receiver. They need to add a legitimate offensive coordinator, and they need to reevaluate the offensive line, whether it's personnel or scheme. My money's on the latter being the issue because they changed the blocking scheme and everything fell off a cliff. I think it's probably a combination, but I think the scheme's the worst thing. They're going to have to change that this offseason. I think they have to give Mac Jones another chance, though. I don't see them being able to land a clear-cut upgrade anywhere. And, you could say, hey, they may be able to draft a quarterback, but are they going to take Anthony Richardson out of Florida in the first round? Like, I love Richardson's skill set, but he is raw. You don't want to put him in a situation where he has to start right away and isn't surrounded by enough weaponry. So, yeah, I think Mac Jones, it's too early to say that he is going to be a quality quarterback replacement. I was hopeful after his first year, less so after the second year, but I'm of the mind that most quarterbacks deserve 3 years of evaluation, especially if they put forth at least one good season. So we'll see what they can do. But after this year, it's kind of on shaky ground is how I'd put it.
Yeah, I want to see Bailey Zappi. I'm kind of tired of Mac Jones yelling at the coaching staff. I think that's kind of a bad look. I think I wouldn't like quit on him. I'd still like try to develop him, but I think that I was kind of disappointed that Belichick didn't go back to Bailey Zappi at some point. I thought he played better, or at least like more careful than Mac Jones did. Like Mac Jones always seemed to take like bad sacks at like the worst times. And he had like too many turnovers, but the offensive line was a big issue for sure. John asking if the Bucks win by 2 touchdowns, is Mike McCarthy out? I would say no, because like Jerry Jones is so stubborn, and like how many years did he keep on Jason Garrett? Like I feel like he's way too slow to pull the trigger sometimes. So I think that McCarthy stays. Now, if it's like 49-0 or something like ridiculous, maybe, but I'd be surprised if McCarthy's fired.
Yeah, that one's a tough one because with Sean Payton floating around out there, Jerry Jones might be like, "Oh, I could bring in Payton," but then he has to trade the draft pick. So I think he'd be more likely to stay loyal to McCarthy in this instance, at least.
Yeah, for sure. We had a comment from Kenny. All these Kirk Cousins defenders in the comments here. I haven't seen this many people defend a mediocre performer since the Cowboys defended Jason Garrett for a decade. Yeah, I had some epic arguments with Cowboys fans regarding Jason Garrett, and I feel like it's kind of like deja vu too. So definitely bravo on Kenny's part here. And staying on Cousins, like Matthias is saying, Cousins beat 4 of the top 5 teams with pressure rate this year. That's not true. Looking at pressure rate right now, so let's go through this. Number 1 in pressure rates, Dallas. The Vikings got slaughtered in that game. Number 2 is the Patriots. And Cousins won that game, but it was more special teams gaffes by the Patriots. I think that it was either an even game, or you can argue that the Patriots outplayed the Vikings. It's a good argument to have, but I think that wasn't a convincing win by the Vikings or anything. Number 3 in pressure rates, actually Jacksonville. I don't think they played Jacksonville. Number 4, Eagles. The Eagles stomped all over the Vikings, not even close. And number 5 was the Giants, and that was a field goal game. And as you mentioned, the Giants outgained the Vikings, both in yards, total yards, and yards per play. So, yeah, the Vikings have not done that well against high pressure rate teams.
Yeah, or at least they've played close games when they've won too.
Yeah, they played a lot of games. Another example, Washington. They won that game, but that was because Heineke threw that horrible interception with 8 minutes to go. Put the Vikings in scoring range like right away, and the Vikings were so lucky to win that game. It's another one where the Vikings were so fortunate. Look, like I'm not a big Giants fan either. I think the Giants are kind of a fluky team as well. I just think that with the offensive line injuries from Minnesota, I think, not to rehash the entire pick, but I think that really gives the Giants the edge in the rematch, I think.
Yeah, it's all about health at this time of year.
Yeah, lots of busts, but yeah, negative point differential with a 13 and 14. I think that's what it comes down to. I'd be shocked if the Vikings make it past the second round. If they beat the Viking, if they beat the Giants, they play the Niners. I think that would. You mentioned a game looking like Georgia TCU. I think that would be pretty similar. I think the Niners would wipe the floor with Minnesota pretty easily.
I agree. That game would be a mismatch.
Okay. As I said before, we have a teaser. So the Bengals almost made the cut. They did not. Instead, it's Giants +9, Buccaneers +8.5. Now, I don't like to go from 3 to 9 because you can just bet the 3, but our options are limited this week, and Buccaneers are the easiest leg here. Like +8.5 seems like a gimme. So it came down to Bengals -1 or Giants +9, and I'm more confident in the Giants covering. Like I'd be shocked that the Vikings, who haven't blown anyone out this year, like except for the Packers week 1. I'd be shocked if they won by double digits. I think Giants +9 is safer than Bengals because if let's say Lamar Jackson comes back and runs all over Cincinnati, and Cincinnati's like poor passing game from week 18 is not a fluke. Like I could see a case where the Bengals lose to the Ravens. So it's a rivalry game. The Ravens beat them earlier in the year with Lamar Jackson. So I still think that's a fine teaser leg, but I'd rather go Giants +9. What would you go with this week?
I would also go +9. I just like getting the dogs in teasers because this protects you. Like the Vikings can win by a touchdown and you would still cover. you might end up in a scenario where the Bengals game is decided by a field goal and you end up on the wrong side of that. So I don't think that will happen, but I think there's a greater chance of that happening than a Vikings blowout because, like you said, the Vikings have played close games throughout the season. And even if they beat the Giants, I think it'll be pretty similar to the game that they played a few weeks ago where it was a 3-point game.
Yeah, especially with all those injuries, Giants being healthier, Vikings not being healthier. So, yeah, that is it for a Week 19 picks. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I will tweet out my picks for every game this week. We did pretty well on Twitter picks last week. I think we were 6-1. The only loss was the first one, the Raiders game. So hopefully we have a similar 6-win week. It'd be unlikely. That would require me to win all of them. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, you can check out sportingnews.com for all your latest NFL news. We'll be covering coaches hiring and firing, the latest rumors about who's going to be the coaching candidates for each team, and we'll have tons of playoff content there too. So yeah, follow me on Twitter though. And if you have any questions, send them my way. Do my best to answer them if I see them.
Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. Also visit the link in the description for Stochastic. If you play DFS, I highly recommend them. Once again, I've been using them for 4 years. And if anything, it gives you ownership data, which is so important. So you can fade bad chalk or get on a low owned play. And, hopefully that'll help you win a tournament. Otherwise, I'm at walterfootball.com. You mentioned coaching changes. Charlie Campbell has a list of possible head coaches and GMs, like the best options for teams. So you can check that out on the site. Our NBA picks are back. I don't know how they're doing tonight. I guess they just started. So hopefully we go 2-0. I have 2 NBA picks tonight. So we're going to have NBA picks every single day. NFL picks updates throughout the week. So on Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, definitely have updates on those games. If you're playing DFS, I have fantasy rankings. But if you're looking for NFL draft content, we have updated mock drafts. I updated my 2024 mock draft on Sunday. I'm going to update my 2023 mock draft tonight around midnight. So you can check that out. And Charlie Campbell posted a mock draft with trades. He has a team moving up to number 1 to trade with the Bears. So you can check that out and see who they move up for. All that's at walterfootball.com. But yeah, it's hopefully we have another great week, and I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.